Imagine a place where the wind does not just blow, it screams. Imagine a land where the sky is a permanent shade of bruised purple and the ground is a sheet of ice 3 miles thick. This is Greenland, January 2026. The world calls it the new frontier, but for the men on the ground, it is simply hell frozen over. The temperature is minus 45 degrees. At this cold, steel becomes brittle like glass, and human skin freezes in less than 60 seconds. This is the stage where our story begins, a stage where nature tries to kill you every single second. But as we are about to see, sometimes the most dangerous thing in the Arctic is not the cold. It is the darkness inside a man's heart. Meet Sergeant Michael Davis. Look closely at his face. His eyes are bloodshot from 20 hours of wakefulness. His skin is cracked from the dry, freezing air. He is 34 years old, but today he looks 50. Davis is behind the wheel of a massive 5-ton military transport truck. The engine groans, a low, metallic growl that is the only thing keeping him company in the white vastness. In the back of his truck is a cargo that cannot wait. It is not gold, it is not oil, it is emergency insulation units and liquid antibiotics for a small medical tent at Outpost Delta. 3 soldiers there are fighting for their lives, not against an enemy, but against a fever that is burning them up while the world outside freezes. Sergeant Davis knows their names, he knows their families, and he has promised himself that he will not let them down. Every bump in the road sends a jolt of pain through his exhausted body, but he does not stop. He cannot stop. The road is narrow, a thin ribbon of gray carved into the ice. On one side, a mountain of rock. On the other, a drop into a bottomless crevasse. It is a path meant for heroes and workers, but then the lights appeared. Through the swirling snow, Davis saw the flash of high-intensity LED headlights. They were not military lights, they were the cold blue eyes of wealth. 3 massive, custom-built black SUVs sat idling in the middle of the road, blocking the only way forward. They looked like predators waiting in the dark. These were the vehicles of Magnus Jensen, a man who believed that the entire island of Greenland was his personal playground. Jensen was not here to serve, he was here to profit. His cars were warm, filled with the smell of expensive leather and heated seats. He was parked there, blocking a vital military route, simply because he wanted to take a photo of the northern lights for his social media followers. To him, the road was his, the island was his, and anyone else was just an intruder. Sergeant Davis slowed his heavy truck to a crawl, the air brakes hissing like a dying animal. He stopped just 10 feet from the lead SUV. He waited, hoping they would see the white cross on his truck. He hoped they would understand the urgency. But the black windows stayed rolled up. No one moved. Davis felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He looked at the clock on his dashboard. Every minute he sat here, the temperature at Outpost Delta dropped another degree. He took a deep breath, adjusted his cap, and opened his door. The Arctic wind hit him like a physical blow, trying to push him back into the cabin, but he stepped out into the snow anyway. He did not know it yet, but he was walking straight into a trap of arrogance. The billionaire in the warm car was about to make a choice that would trigger a chain of events no one could stop. The heavy door of the military transport creaked open, and Sergeant Michael Davis stepped out into the white abyss. The snow was already 6 inches deep, and it crunched under his heavy boots with a sound like breaking glass. Every breath he took felt like swallowing needles, but he did not flinch. He walked toward the lead black SUV, his eyes fixed on the tinted glass that shielded the billionaire from the reality of the Arctic. Davis stood there, a lone figure in a faded camouflage parka, waiting for a sign of humanity. For 30 long seconds, nothing happened. The SUV sat there, pulsing with heat, vibrating with the sound of a luxury engine. It was a silent insult to the man standing in the storm. Finally, the window began to slide down. It did not drop fast, it moved with a slow, mechanical arrogance. A wave of warm air, smelling of expensive cologne and tobacco, hit the sergeant's face. Inside sat Magnus Jensen. He did not look at Davis. He was busy looking at a gold watch on his wrist, as if the sergeant's presence was a scheduled annoyance he had not agreed to. When he finally turned his head, his eyes were cold, devoid of any respect for the uniform or the man wearing it. Jensen did not ask what was wrong. He did not ask if Davis needed help. He simply sneered and told the sergeant that he was blocking his view of the horizon. Davis kept his voice steady, though his hands were shaking from the cold. He explained the mission. He spoke of the 3 soldiers at Outpost Delta whose lives were hanging by a thread. He mentioned the antibiotics and the heating units in the back of his truck. He asked, as one human to another, for Jensen to move his vehicles just 20 feet back so the convoy could pass. But Jensen only laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that cut through the wind. He told Davis that his little delivery meant nothing compared to the millions of dollars Jensen was making in the port. He called the soldiers expendable assets and told Davis that in Greenland, money was the only commander-in-chief. The situation escalated when Davis reached into his pocket to show his official military movement orders. He held out the papers, signed by the Pentagon, stamped with the seal of the United States Army. He thought the law would protect him. He was wrong. Jensen reached out, snatched the papers from the sergeant's frozen fingers, and looked at them for a fraction of a second. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he began to tear them. He ripped the official orders into small pieces and let the Arctic wind carry them away like dead leaves. "Your papers have no power here," Jensen whispered, his face inches from the sergeant's. "I am the law in this sector. I own the docks, I own the roads, and if I want to, I can own you." Then Jensen did the unthinkable. He reached out and shoved the sergeant hard. Davis, exhausted and caught off guard, stumbled back into the snow. The billionaire stepped out of his car, standing over the fallen soldier, mocking him. At that moment, the blue and red lights of a police cruiser appeared through the fog. For a second, Davis felt a surge of hope. He thought the authorities would finally end this madness. But as the officers stepped out, they did not head toward Jensen. They walked straight to Jensen, shaking his hand and laughing at a joke the billionaire made. These were not protectors, they were mercenaries in uniform, men who had long ago traded their badges for Jensen's peril. The humiliation was complete. Under Jensen's watchful, mocking gaze, the officers grabbed Sergeant Davis. They did not listen to his story. They did not look at the truck with the red cross on the side. They forced the veteran down into the frozen slush, pressing his face against the ice. Davis felt the cold metal of the handcuffs bite into his wrists. He felt the weight of the officer's knee in his back. Jensen stood there, lighting a cigar, watching the scene as if it were a private show put on for his entertainment. He told the officers to clear the trash from his road and to make sure the truck was towed to a location where it would never be found. As they dragged Davis toward the police car, he looked back one last time at his truck. He thought of the 3 boys at the outpost, waiting in the dark, waiting for the medicine that would now never arrive. He felt a pain in his chest that was colder than the Arctic wind. He had been betrayed not by an enemy, but by the very people he was sworn to protect. Jensen climbed back into his warm SUV, rolled up the window, and continued his journey, leaving the soldier in the shadows. The billionaire thought he had won a small game of power. He had no idea that the handcuffs he had put on the sergeant were actually the keys to his own destruction. The clock was now ticking, and the army was already beginning to look for its missing son. While Magnus Jensen was laughing in his heated office 30 miles away at the Pitofik space base, a different kind of silence had taken over. In the high-tech command center, a wall of blue screens monitored every movement across the frozen tundra. Suddenly, a small red light began to blink on the logistics grid. It was the signal for truck number 7 409. Sergeant Davis' truck. For 10 minutes, the signal had been stationary. Now it had vanished completely. The young technician at the console adjusted his headset, his brow furrowed in confusion. He tried to hail Davis on the secure radio frequency, but there was only static, cold, empty sound of a dead line. In the military, a missing signal is not just a technical glitch. It is a heartbeat that has stopped. The technician did not hesitate. He stood up and called for the duty officer. Within minutes, the report reached the top-floor office of Colonel Robert Sterling. Sterling was a man who moved like a mountain, slow, heavy, and unstoppable. He was a veteran of 3 decades, a man who had seen empires fall and rise. To him, the soldiers under his command were not just names on a list. They were his sons and daughters. When he heard that Davis, a man known for his punctuality and flawless record, had disappeared near the port, the air in the room seemed to turn even colder than the world outside. Colonel Sterling did not start by shouting. He started by gathering facts. He picked up the secure line to the local port police station, the very office where Sergeant Davis was currently being held in a cold, dark cell. The man who answered the phone was Officer Miller, same man who had taken Jensen's money. Miller's voice was shaky, but he tried to play it cool. He told the colonel that there had been a minor traffic incident. He claimed that a disorderly civilian in a military vehicle had been detained for public endangerment. He lied. He told the colonel that the truck was being held for safety reasons and that there was no need for military interference. But Colonel Sterling had been listening to liars for 30 years. He heard the tremor in Miller's voice. He heard the sound of someone who was hiding behind a wall of paper. Sterling asked one simple question: "Is my soldier safe?" Miller hesitated for 2 seconds. See 2-second silence that told the colonel everything he needed to know. Miller tried to repeat his lie, but the colonel had already hung up. Sterling didn't need any more words. He reached for his combat gear. He didn't call the governor. He didn't call the embassy. He looked at his executive officer and gave a command that had not been heard in this sector for years: full mobilization. Operation Brotherhood is a go. I want every man in the quick reaction force ready to move in 5 minutes. The base, which had been a quiet hum of activity, suddenly exploded into a symphony of power. The heavy steel doors of the vehicle bays slid open, revealing the beast-like shapes of 5 armored Humvees and 2 heavy infantry carriers. These were not transport vehicles, they were weapons of war, designed to survive blasts and bullets. One by one, their massive engines roared to life, sending clouds of dark exhaust into the white sky. Soldiers in full white Arctic camouflage, looking like ghosts of the tundra, moved with mechanical precision. They checked their rifles, secured their thermal gear, and climbed into the steel bellies of the machines. There was no talking. There was only the grim focus of men who were going to bring one of their own back home. Colonel Sterling climbed into the lead Humvee. He sat in the front seat, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. He was not just a commander now, he was a force of nature. As the convoy rolled out of the base gates, the ground literally shook. The local workers at the gate watched in silence as the column of steel disappeared into the swirling snow. The ice on the road cracked under the weight of the military tires. This was not a routine patrol. This was a message that the United States Army does not negotiate for the lives of its soldiers. While the corrupt police and the Billionaire thought they were safe behind their desks, 10,000 tons of steel and fury were screaming toward them at 60 miles per hour. The convoy reached the outskirts of the port town in record time. The local residents stopped what they were doing, watching in awe and fear as the armored giants rumbled through their quiet streets. Windows rattled. Snow was blown off the roofs by the sheer force of the engines. The convoy did not stop for traffic lights. It did not slow down for the local police patrols. It moved like a spear through the heart of the town. People began to take out their phones, filming the sight of the military's arrival. They knew something big was happening. They could feel the tension in the air, feeling that a storm had finally arrived to wash away the corruption. Meanwhile, inside the police station, Officer Miller looked at the security monitors. He saw the first Humvee turn the corner, its heavy brush guard looking like the jaws of a predator. His face went pale. He looked at the phone, then at the cell where Sergeant Davis sat in the dark. He realized too late that Magnus Jensen's money could not buy protection from what was coming. The rumbling of the engines was so loud now that the coffee in Miller's cup was dancing. The walls of the station began to groan. The colonel was here, and he was not coming to talk about a traffic incident. He was coming to tear the building down if that's what it took to find his man. The convoy did not just stop, it occupied the street. The 5 armored Humvees formed a perfect perimeter around the local police station, their turrets rotating with mechanical coldness. Colonel Sterling stepped out of the lead vehicle before it had even fully stopped vibrating. His boots hit the icy pavement with the weight of a judge's gavel. Behind him, 24 elite soldiers moved in a silent, deadly synchronized dance, cutting off every exit. The local police officers inside looked through the glass doors, their faces turning the color of the snow outside. They had spent years bullying civilians, but they had never seen a storm like this. Colonel Sterling walked toward the entrance. He didn't wait for the automatic doors to slide open. He didn't care for formalities. As he reached the glass, the doors seemed to hesitate, and for a second, the colonel's reflection was the only thing visibly a man of iron, framed by the chaos of the Arctic wind. He pushed through with such force that the entire frame rattled. Inside, the station was silent. Officer Miller was standing behind the main desk, his hand hovering near his holster, but his fingers were shaking so violently he couldn't even grip the leather. Sterling walked straight up to the desk, his presence filling the room until there was no air left for anyone else. The colonel didn't say a word at first. He simply stared at Miller. It was a look that stripped away the officer's rank, his uniform, and his lies. Miller tried to speak, tried to mention the legal procedures or civilian jurisdiction, but the words died in his throat. Sterling leaned over the desk, his face inches from the corrupt officer. "You have 60 seconds, the colonel whispered, his voice vibrating with a dangerous edge. 60 seconds to bring my sergeant to this desk. If he is not here, I will consider this building a hostile installation, and I will treat it accordingly." Miller didn't even look back. He fumbled with his keys, nearly dropping them twice, and ran toward the cell block. The other police officers in the room slowly raised their hands, stepping away from their desks as the elite soldiers moved in to secure the area. A minute later, the heavy steel door at the back opened. Sergeant Michael Davis walked out. He was pale, his uniform was torn, and his hands were still bound in plastic zip ties. But when he saw the colonel, when he saw the rows of camouflage and the flag on their shoulders, he stood taller. One of the soldiers moved forward, cutting the ties with a combat knife in one swift motion. Sterling stepped up to Davis, placed a hand on his shoulder, and spoke only 3 words: "The mission continues." But the rescue was only half of the story. The source of the poison was still sitting in his ivory tower. Sterling left a squad to secure the station and led the rest of his men toward the glass skyscraper that overlooked the Harborth headquarters of Magnus Jensen. The billionaire was in his penthouse, watching the military movement through a pair of high-powered binoculars. He was on the phone, screaming at his lawyers, demanding that they call the Pentagon, the White House, anyone who could stop the armored tide. He still thought his money was a wall. He still thought his status made him untouchable. The elevators in the building had been deactivated, but that didn't stop the army. The soldiers moved up the stairs with the relentless pace of a machine. When they reached the top floor, Jensen's private security teamman paid $500 an hour to look tough. Simply stepped aside. They saw the look in the colonel's eyes and realized that no amount of money was worth dying for. The double oak doors to Jensen's office were locked from the inside. Sterling didn't knock. He signaled to two of his men, who placed a small breaching charge on the hinges. The explosion was precise and deafening. The doors collapsed inward in a cloud of splinters and dust. Magnus Jensen fell backward over his mahogany desk, dropping his glass of whiskey. He scrambled to his feet, trying to regain his dignity, but he looked like a cornered rat. "This is illegal," he shrieked, his voice cracking. "I have contracts. I have friends in high places. You can't touch me, Colonel. You'll have your stars for this." Sterling walked across the expensive rug, his boots leaving tracks of slush and mud. He didn't stop until he was standing right in front of the billionaire. The colonel reached out and grabbed Jensen by the collar of his $5,000 fur coat. He pulled him close, so close the billionaire could see the reflection of his own fear in the colonel's pupils. "Your friends can't hear you over the sound of my engines," Sterling said, his voice as cold as a tomb. "And your money is just paper in a world made of steel. You interfered with a life-saving mission. You assaulted a soldier of the United States in this sector under emergency protocol that make you a threat to national security." With a sudden, powerful movement, Sterling spun the billionaire around and forced him down on to his own desk. One of the soldiers stepped forward and snapped a pair of heavy military-grade handcuffs onto Jensen's wrists. The billionaire began to sob, the arrogance completely gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic pleading. He offered millions, he offered his ships, he offered his soul, but the colonel wasn't listening. He turned to his men and gave the order, "Take him, and find every officer who took his blood money. We're cleaning this port tonight." As Jensen was dragged out of his office, past his silent employees and his broken doors, the town watched from below. They saw the billionaire being loaded into the back of a military truck, same kind of truck he had mocked earlier that day. The news spread like wildfire. The man who thought he owned Greenland was now just another prisoner. The military convoy moved back through the streets, but this time Sergeant Davis was back in the driver's seat of truck number 7409. The mission was completed. The medical supplies reached Outpost Delta just as the sun, what little of it there waist began to dip below the horizon. The three soldiers were saved, the heat was restored, and in the silence of the Arctic night, the lesson remained. Money can build walls, but it cannot build honor. Wealth can buy silence, but it cannot buy respect. Magnus Jensen would spend the next several months in a military facility, facing charges that no lawyer could fix. The port was under new, honest leadership, and Sergeant Davis. He continued his patrols, a little more tired, a little more weathered, but with the knowledge that he was never truly alone. Because the Army does not just carry weapons, it carries a promise that no matter how far you go, no matter how cold it gets, and no matter how powerful your enemy thinks they are, your brothers will always come to bring you home. Thank you for watching this story of justice and courage. If you believe that honor is more powerful than greed, hit the like button and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories where the heroes always find their way. Until next time, stay vigilant.